In the spirit of today's meeting, I've destroyed all images accompanying my talk. The concept of ideologies undermined many assumptions about political thinking. It queries and often erodes symbolic views of the social world that had accrued iconic status, that is to say, outstanding and respected cultural salience. Concurrently, it has challenged several venerated processes of political knowledge evaluation. Ideological iconoclasm bridges a series of happenings, from immediate physical destruction, as we've heard throughout the day, to the protracted negation of beliefs as erroneous and deceptive. The iconic credentials of political ideas had depended on the cast iron reputation of their sources and the irrefutable authority of their claims, accompanied either as expressions of divine will conveyed through hallowed texts and their guardians, or as products of rational thinking accessible through the impeccable minds of intellectual and spiritual specialists. All that was about to change. Ideological iconoclasm was bolstered by a triple process. First, the uncoupling of knowledge from the certainty of theological faith, which unleashed epistemological pluralism. It introduced contingency as normal, questioning the durability assigned to learned reasoning. Second, breaking with the uncritical adulation of uniquely gifted individuals, initiated a paradigm shift. Fresh political thinking was in principle possible at all levels of society. And third, the grip of older power centers was loosened, as we've just heard, following the French Revolution. The increasing participation of excluded sectors in active political life disrupted the prestige of the monarchy and aristocracy that had buttressed the social order and its cerebral and customary certitudes. But there was no uniformity in the nascent meanings of ideology. Each wave of conceptual consolidation iconoclastically rejected the authority underpinning the previous ideological hegemony. Initially, ideology proceeded in two divergent paths, each of which interpreted political Weltanschauung as social products, discrediting their indisputability. The first wave revealed fundamental distortions conveyed through dominant modes of thought, such as identifying private property as essential to the human condition. Marx and Engels deflated existing social ideas, bringing them, in their words, down to earth. Ideologies were mystifications to be exposed and removed. Secular tenets claiming correct social insights swept away ideas that reflected false consciousness and socioeconomic alienation. And ideology, in a Marxist sense, became a denigrating term, undermining bourgeois and exploitative beliefs. Its very identification was meant to eliminate the phenomenon it denoted. Yet in unmasking ideology, Marxists and sociologists of knowledge paradoxically generated a new set of iconic scholars. The debunking of ideology triggered a quest to rebuild authoritative principles of social conduct. Marxism propelled a shift from giving voice to the iconic bearers of truth messages, which had hitherto been secured by their seminal gravitas, to investigating the depersonalized social truths and the social perversions of their production. The renewed pursuit of universal truths was now grounded in radically new theories of human commonality, not in religious belief, not in metaphysics, or not in the so-called natural laws of social superiority. Marx himself, of course, achieved formidable iconic status through the mass acclaim of Marxist analyses, themselves distilled into a widespread ideology tellingly named Marxism, as well as graphically represented and reproduced through Marx's bearded visage, from statues to book covers to T-shirts. The next wave relativized beliefs as ephemeral, temporally and spatially anchored. Studying ideology became an anthropocentric endeavor attuned to concrete patterns of social behavior, not the armchair theorizing indulged in by Marx and Engels. The latter claimed to articulate a scientific view that detailed the tribulations of the proletariat and unlocked the truths that would emancipate it. But they wrote in the name of a class, rather than letting that class voice its own understandings. By contrast, for the pioneering social theorist Karl Mannheim, the study of ideologies was concerned, and I quote, with the problem of how men actually think, how thinking really functions in public life and in politics as an instrument of collective action. Mannheim contended that the monopolies of various cognoscenti and priestly castes were now broken. The iconoclasm was palpable here because, as Mannheim writes, in this process, the intellectual's illusion that there's only one way of thinking disappears. Later, ideology was connected to pernicious international political movements. As totalitarianism took root in several European countries, mid-20th century ideologies monopolized the real-world discourses in their societies. Icon creation saw revival through populist and manipulative art. A gallery of personalized icons, both worshipped and despised, emerged around Stalin, Hitler, Mussolini, and later Mao in China. In particular, the vigorous imagery of the 1930s Nuremberg rallies, captured by Leni Riefenstahl's stunning cinematography, cemented the marriage of propaganda as an overwhelming visual spectacle with a cult of physicality, race, and leadership. Icons were resurrected as emotional evocations of national exclusivity. In Europe, the breaking down of those powerful ideologies was eventually prompted, of course, by military defeat, but it was also hastened by the souring of those mystical appeals, by the slow percolation of liberal democratic counter-ideologies from within, and not least by the withering impact of iconoclastic political cartoons. National Socialist insignia, such as the swastikas, as we know, were subsequently banned by the democratic successor states to the Third Reich. By the late 20th century, the meaning of ideology had mutated further as microsets of recurring beliefs. Ideologies justified or contested the social arrangements of a political community through reflecting the inherent semantic and epistemological fluidity of concepts. Ideology was regarded as a ubiquitous device in multiple formats, competing over plans for public policy through controlling political language, to be decoded rather than to be unmasked. More recently, those looser ideological discourses have been circulated not just in vernacular, but in demotic terms, radically demoting them from their past pedestals as respected statements. And their impact lies now in the uninhibited freedom to express opinionated voice, not in their inherent superiority or quality. So the 21st century is witnessing the disintegration of ideologies as a coherent thought practice, and with it the prestige of their discourses and spokespeople. Both style and substance have been profaned. The result has been a disengagement from the iconic eminence of debate and of debaters, and from the discourses that accompanied ideologies as projections of political identities. A chaotic fragmentation has removed the filters that protect the public domain from a cacophonic and super-atomized inundation through down-up electronic channels. The indiscriminate equivalence bestowed by social media in giving vent to badly thought out or malicious voices reduces the capacity to attach variable weight to the myriad voices now effortlessly securing a stage. Ideological stances are privatized and affected by skepticism and ephemerality. And this change of scene requires novel tools for analyzing ideologies, centering on expressivity, on assertions of participant ideology, and on perlocutionary performativity. This approach accepts that ideologies are normal features of political thinking that routinely contain the good, the bad, and the mediocre. They are seen chiefly as propagating and explanatory devices focusing on communicability, on persuasiveness, but not on iconic authority. Iconoclasm is, of course, also a material activity, and we talked a lot today about the smashing of religious icons, but that practice is also aimed at ideological artifacts. Statues of Lenin were toppled after 1989 as the wall came down. Interestingly, the Budapest Memorial for Victims of the German Occupation has sparked sustained protests. Messages at its base denounce its silence over the Hungarian Nazi collaborators. They're silent. Their history has been erased in this particular sculpture. And those public government-defying gestures differ from private iconoclastic acts, which are often indistinguishable from vandalism, as when Marx's famous likeness over his London grave was anonymously blown up. Was this an ideological gesture or just the act of an unhappy individual? And iconoclasm is often found within nationalist creeds, burning flags, disfiguring crests, and exhuming public figures commonly assert political identity through obliterating rival affirmations of national selfhood. Each ideology attempts to dismantle the foundational credos of its rivals that by default shape the heart of its own arguments. For example, conservatives relentlessly assault the canonical precepts that threaten their ideological dispositions. As the French conservative thinker Joseph de Maistre put it, decrying the cult of universal man, and I quote, "I've seen Frenchmen, Italians, Russians, etc., but as for man, I declared I've never in my life met him." For Isaiah Berlin, Maistre's mission was to, quote, "destroy everything which the 18th century has built up," the very epitome of iconoclasm. Iconoclasm is driven by anger, by violence, by insecurity, and by misrepresentation. Anger, whether irrational or righteous, plays a significant part in the psyche of ideologies. Violence is, on the surface, formally restricted to fascist, far-right, and several revolutionary ideologies. Insecurity may be transmogrified into bravado, hiding an existential anxiety. And falsification or selective filtering is rampant as ideologies diminish their opponents' political relevance. Ideological iconoclasm can be assessed through two modes of expression that run through it. The one marshals the emotions that ideology project in attempting to shape the world. Thus, patriotism is a potent tool in an ideology's semantic impact, adding to its power to mobilize or exclude, to legitimate or annihilate. The second mode concerns the methods used to elevate a particular ideology. The case for democracy needs to be patiently assembled, but its commitment to weighing evidence accords it greater durability in the long run. Only some aspects of an ideology can act as a battering ram to shatter ossified counterparts. Thus, liberalism is intrinsically rigid on the protection of human rights, while flexible on methods of redistributive justice. The dualism of ideologies as affirming and vilifying instruments places them at the center of the political world. And when reasoning meets a brick wall, the undercurrents of iconoclastic violence remain necessary forms of political drama. Thank you.
What you call the chaotic fragmentation of political ideology has moved the focus from the state, the community, the group, and now to the individual. We have the political ideology of the self.
Yes.
Yes, good, because then I would like to ask you, where do we go from here?
I'm not a futurologist, but what I will say is that I think we are now recognizing the natural fragmentation of ideologies, which were artificially put together or held together by power structures and by hierarchies. Ideologies are naturally flimsy and shifting and fluid constructs. That they some parts drop off from one ideology and are picked up by another. So they clash. They lose parts. They gain parts. And it's this normal flexibility that means that we will always be in a state of movement.
But chaotic fragmentation sounds rather pessimistic. Could anything good come out of all this?
Well, you see, the countervailing part of power of chaos is, of course, the re-establishment of order. Out of terror, out of anxiety, out of the need to freeze frame things that are too mobile to be kept under control.
Start all over again.
Start all over again, or develop some new system.
We will live long enough to see what happens, Michael.
Not us, no.